Раз, два, три. О, отлично. Дорогие коллеги,
Dear colleagues, let us start. Thanks for coming for the most important session of the Finapolis. If you know Boolean equation in algebra, you know that everything will be multiplied by zero if there is no IT security. All those technologies are meaningless without cybersecurity. So thanks for coming. We will talk about the trends of cybersecurity, and we will pay attention what changes will take place in the applicable law with the risk insurance. Let me introduce our panelists from left to right. Igor Lapunov, Vice President of Rostelecom Company. Artem Sychov, First Deputy Director of the Information Security Department. Andrei Popov from the Management Committee of the Raiffeisen Bank. Igor Vedyakhin, Deputy General Director of IBS and Director of the IT Infrastructure Division. Mr. Kramer from AIG Russia, and Mr. Garbunin from Bank of Russia Insurance Department. Let me have my talk in bullet points, and then we will start. So let me throw some facts and figures to you. In the US, it is expected, and there was a report that was published recently, and it was confirmed by President of the US and the Senate. The damage is $600 billion US. Another fact, Premier Medvedev at Open Innovation Forum stated that the damage to the Russian economy is 600 billion rubles. And no joking, thanks to the efforts of the central bank, the damage to the banks starting from the end of the start of the year is 76 million rubles. Strange figures as they are, and but we can say that cybercrime does exist, and if we see the statistics of the registered crime and the data from Interpol and Interpol, this is the most probable crime, and that stands to reason. In the past 20 years, the crime was financially motivated, and most of the cyber criminals are organized, and the major incentive for them is finance, money. And the latest trade is financially non-motivated cybercrime. Politically non-motivated is hackers sponsored by the states. It's a new trend for both Russia and the rest of the world, because it opens a new map of threats. There are some 40 groups now whose idea is to attack the subcritical infrastructure. And those groups are not interested in financial crime, but to get the information, sensible information about the clients, and also to exercise control over critically important facilities. That kind of information is available, and we should look into it. Another point, we should deviate from the concept that we regard the information security as an internal one, without understanding the incentives, the motivation of the criminals, without linking the internal network with the external incentives, like what are the motives of the activity of the crimes. We won't be, without analyzing all those things, we won't be able to build the security infrastructure. And another thing, it's risk assessment. When we do the investigation and respond to crimes, we can deduce that most of the crimes occur not because the banks do not have security or they do not have qualified personnel. People do not evaluate the risk properly. And what they believe is probabilistic has got nothing to do with the probability, and the risks, the map that they receive from the consultants have no foundation at all. That's what we are going to talk about. And another thing we are going to discuss is cyber insurance. More figures. $3.5 billion and another, it is by 2020, and $7 billion now. That's the volume of the market, nothing for Russia. Insurance should take place, taking into consideration the probability rate of this crime occurring, but not all the companies insure their assets against cyber crimes in Russia, and we will discuss what's the reason why. Let me start with Mr. Sychov. Artem, despite the activity of your team from the central bank, the attacks and the damage has been reduced by a factor of 14 times. It is the lowest since the cyber crimes in the world. It is low, but at the same time, the number of the cyber attacks is on the increase. What causes the incidents, the breach, cybersecurity breaches? What is missing? What will the central bank do to still improve the situation? Everything is under control now, but there's always room for perfection. So that's what I would like to start with. Thanks. It's an interesting question indeed. And let me start not with saying that we have a nice team in the central bank, and that's why the crime rate is on the decrease. Not that. The reason is that we are collaborating with the credit organization, and that became possible thanks to FinServ, and we are inspiring and encouraging the joint activities on how to repulse the cyber attacks. Regarding the cyber attacks per se, I would rather divide those into two groups. The first group, it is the attack against the financial institutions. We are analyzing the statistics of what is happening beyond the credit organizations as well. And another one, it is the clients, the customers of the financial institutions that are under attack. And the situation with the customers is a bit more complicated. We can see that the banks have learned how to work with their clients, and many have received the information of the do's and don'ts. And the figures that we can see is the criminals are dealing or attacking the customers, clients of the banking organization more, because they are not capable to benefit financially from the banks. Because a few days ago, we received an information from the law enforcement, and we got in touch with two banks, and we prevented the heist. and one of the groupings of the criminals. And so the criminals understand, the offenders understand that they cannot get a fast buck from the banks. They reorient to the customers. What is the reason why? Not that many reasons. One reason is related to the behavior of the customers of the banks. The customers do not understand the first thing about the cybersecurity when the state-of-the-art technologies are used. We have been raising this issue at the 3 days of the Phenopolis. We do give new financial instruments. We provide new software, new apps. We are present at the mobile devices of the users, but the users fail to understand that they live in an isolated world. They live in a dangerous world which could be detrimental to his finances, and not all the customers understand how to live in a world like that. And another reason is related to the financial organizations, to the lenders. Not all the lenders are prepared to focus on the cybersecurity issues. And when they face the incidents, they come to realize that they should have been paying more attention to the issues of the cybersecurity. And it is easy to start to that kind of activity. We received the statistics to analyze what was the cause of the heist. There is a mapping of the causes. Could you tell us what are the most popular attacks? I can. One is using the vulnerabilities in the Microsoft, strange as it is, but it's not the major problem. The requirements that the banks are supposed to meet, like protecting the segments of the networks, building the defense, is included into both the standards and the codes. The point is the enforcement, whether the implementations of those things. And it's up to the specific financial organizations of how meticulous it is in the implementation. And now, what is the central bank planning? We are planning a number of the undertakings. There is a federal law, and we are refusing from the self-assessment of the defenses of the lending community, and it will have to be peer assessment, and it's quite a challenge for the banking community because we understand that there are not that many assessments available now, and their qualification could be very high, and the banks are not prepared to perform that kind of activity. However, they know what is audit in conformance with the required standards. And when we will have to do that kind of assessment, and namely it is the end of 2018 and early 2019, we will do that kind of exercise. And the banks, the financial organizations should know their weaknesses, and those kind of gaps should be bridged. Our idea is not to punish the banks. So we need to have an understanding what we should improve. That's one thing. And another exercise that we are planning is to start the awareness campaign for the banks. And we will have to exchange the information. If the bank provides the information, or if we receive the information from the law enforcement organizations and handed it over to the bank, and the bank responds trying to rectify the situation, irrespective of what tools are used, whether they invite us to deal with that, or they have an in-house alert team, or they use their peers. If they are reducing the risk, it's an indicator for us that the operational risks should be dealt with by the banks. And so if they respond, we understand that risks is under control. But if we can see that the risks conceals the information, does not disclose it to us, then we will have to start the inspection.
Правильно я понимаю, что все
You understand it correctly that every bank should undergo this check during the year? Well, yeah, this is true. And do you have enough resources to check this huge amount of banks? This is a huge challenge for us, that's true, but I think that we'll be able to manage this, because currently banks are audited according to this regulation, to the former regulation, so we do have enough resources, and I think we will solve this problem as well. Several questions. We see positive change over the last year. If we exclude the issues with FinCert and the information exchange, what are the other top 3 events leading to improvement of cybersecurity? First, this is an increase of information we exchange, and the quality of the data exchange also improved. As soon as we received information about some cyber attacks, we did an information bulletin and distributed it to everyone, which helped prevent further attacks. So people do exchange, to share information, and that's a good thing. Another one is that previously, one of the main risk groups were the elderly people. Now they learn how to uncover malicious activities, identify malicious activities. But we have a counter trend, because citizens and consumers from 28 to 40 are now a risk group, because they treat information technologies in a different way. They trust them too much. So we should be shifting our training towards this age group and the youth who actually trust technologies even more without understanding how the technologies work. And a last question. I know there is a discussion about the regulation of assessing cyber risks in the bank capital. Could you share some updates on how those risks will be evaluated? Well, you can see it in the news every day. We had a discussion in the Bank Association yesterday. According to the plan, this regulations will appear towards end of this year. We'll meet this deadline. Assessing the risks, both incidents are evaluated, and the external assessments, effective incidents are taking into account money losses to the banking institution. And we use these stats we updated in early Q3. So we'll see how it's going to be functioning. Underlying factor are the requirements, the incidents, and the losses. These are the factors we take into account. And the very last question, the report you're talking about, where can we download that? You can take it as a paper copy of the FinCert stand, and it has been published on the website of the Bank of Russia. So you are free to download that. Mr. Gabonia, you are heading the head of the insurance market department of the Bank of Russia. So my question will be related to insurance. Do you think that the level of liability of a banking institution is sufficient? And do you think that insurance of cyber risks or specific incidents, insurance for specific incidents should be compulsory for the banks? What is the opinion of the Bank of Russia on this? Right, thank you. The insurance of cyber risks worldwide is a young concept, just like the concept of cyber risks. And I would say that currently it is not that huge in Russia and elsewhere. Taking exact stats, this is $2.3 million of insurance premiums out of the billions of the insurance market. In Europe, the market is even smaller. So on a whole, this is not a booming story, but it is growing very dynamically. Why? Because insurance is all about stats. You have to see a certain frequency of an event to calculate the insurance premium. So here in this part, we did not have enough stats here. The stats were very bad, now it's bad. And to make a market grow, we need some time to accumulate some historical data. What are the driving factors? What is the frequency, depending on the business, depending on the industry, depending on the security systems, etc. And the situation for the insurance companies is more difficult because the world is very dynamic and it's changing the reasons of cyber risks, the objects the criminals attack, the technologies are also being developed, and the introduction of their technologies in our daily life changes the landscape. So this is a very challenging task, but I think that this insurance has bright outlooks in those industries because everything digital becomes more and more part of our daily life, and in this way or another, the insurance companies will find their place in the market. It could be a purely cyber risk insurance or a combined product where all-in-one risk insurance policy. However, the deep penetration of this insurance type is a thing of the future. The insurance companies are exploring this possibility in Russia in a very limited way, and they are now building up the competence, which they will benefit from when the demand for this insurance type increases. So this will give them a competitive edge in the growing market. Now, for the liability, I believe you've talked about the liability of the insurance company, and this is not a compulsory insurance. And this is a good thing that we do not regulate this. This insurance stats that we have on file, there were no significant conflicts between companies and insurance companies and insurance companies. So companies are normally well aware about what they are insuring, what they're insuring that from, and the liability of the insurance company. All those questions are being balanced as part of the civil rights system. So I believe we should stick for this format for some time, because the structure of this market is so very much diversified that regulating this market will prevent the insurance companies gain this expertise to be able to react to cyber risks in our changing world. As to the role of the regulators in our relations with insurance companies and this market, it's obvious that the volumes currently are so low that it cannot impact the stability of insurance companies. But at the same time, we will need to figure out how we will react to the growth of the market and the growth of the insurance premiums and the balance sheets of insurance companies, and how we will be create reserves for this risk, because it's a very peculiar one. First, it has a statistical probability, and we need some historical data to determine this frequency. But at the same time, we have outbursts like the Onhype, which has done a lot more damage than other incidents. So the cyber risk incidents could have a characteristic of a catastrophic risk, which cannot be forecasted easily. And this is a huge challenge for insurance companies and for us as a regulator as well. But this is not a problem of tomorrow, but maybe the day after tomorrow. So we should figure it out today. As for compulsory insurance, be it implied insurance or direct compulsory insurance schemes, the need for it arises out of two reasons. First, the state could want to regulate some social structures, social relations, because of the social situation getting too acute, like the situation with the compulsory insurance of vehicles. And the second reason could be saving a lot of money or increasing stability of a banking system to replace direct damage to the society with a insurance policy, thus transferring the loss to the insurance industry. In my opinion, the scale of cyber risks is currently not worth it. So currently is not on the agenda. Short questions. First question, do you as Bank of Russia insure your cyber risks? No. Why? Out of the same reason. But out of my experience, as I've been working in Rossельхозbank, we had an attempt to work with one of the leading insurance companies worldwide by insuring cyber risks, and we had a very simple issue. First, this is the volume, the scope of this insurance policy. We understood the scope very differently. And the second thing is the methodology of valuation. How can we assess that everything is fine, and how the insurer can evaluate, can assess the soundness of our security concept? And this experience has made me think that, speaking about the cyber risks insurance, we need to have a universal methodology to assess the security concept. If we have it, a universal methodology, if we have an understanding what is the object we insure, what is the scope of insurance policy, then we will be able to promote this. But I think this is the question of liability or responsibility, speaking about the public incidents, like Megaphone who had a personal data leak of all the customers, and they were fined with 500k rubles. In the US, a personal data leak without an insurance would kick the company out of the market fully, because the risks and the penalties are very high. But I would like to ask Mr. Kremer, Vladimir Putin yesterday gave us a ticket to heaven with a forum in Valdai, and this is good news. But back to the cyber risk insurance. Let's continue our discussion we had with Mr. Gabunia. What are the leading companies currently using? Could you tell a little bit more about this?
Those who have insurance against cyber crime, cyber risks, will get to the heaven as well. But in reality, the problem is not that easy from the point of view of the insurance companies, because for the very reason that it's a new type of insurance, there's no clear understanding of what cyber risks are. Many believe that cyber risks is the risk associated with computers or hacker attacks, but it could be a risk of the unsuccessful update of the software. So these risks should be defined, and it's necessary to understand that some part of those risks are included into the insurance policy, like, for example, property insurance. If you have insurance against all risks, it includes the risks, cyber risks as well. If the computer risks are not, if there's no exemption to the policy. Have you had such incidents? I'm not sure, but I think there were. And so that's the cyber risks that existed. And for example, there are computers on the cars, and it will be evolving. The insurance company will have to deal with that. They will either have to identify it and to exempt it from their policies, or they have to cover it. Another one is insuring cyber risks for the financial institutions in the so-called comprehensive banking community. There was a definition of the digital cyber crimes. It might be stealing money by means of digital devices. That kind of insurance has been in existence for quite some time. It's a conventional cyber crime. What are the new things? I know that you have a service or a package to protect the financial institutions against crimes. What is the cyber risks over there? Computer crime is what I have just mentioned. It is widespread insurance in Russia, and there are some 35 policies that exist in Russia, and the premium amount is some 8 million rubles. It is difficult to say specifically because it is part of the general package. Since 2013, there is a comprehensive insurance of the losses, damage related to cyber incident. And it could be used by the financial institutions and to the others. It is a liability for disclosure of the cyber information. It is loss of profit as a result of stopping business processes like business interruption. It is the expenses to overcome the cyber blackmail. It is this particular policy lists a lot of things, and the international insurers, when they refer to cyber risks, they mean exactly that kind of coverage. And it is almost there. It is in existence abroad, and versus the other types of the insurance, it is not that well proliferated, but it is gaining prominence. And we and the AIG in Europe, Middle East, Africa in 2017, we covered as many losses last year as in the previous 4 years. What was the reason for that? What was the prerequisite? It was the rise of the policies purchased, and the risks are growing. There's more involvement of the automated systems, RPA, and the infiltration of the computer systems of our life. So the merger of IT and financial institutions, the IT and logistics systems result in the number of the losses increase, in the amount of the losses increases. The volume of life insurance is in Russia is 430 billion rubles. Could that be true? It could. Why so little of cyber risks insurance? If we have the comprehensive policies, there are not that many in Russia, but we will not include the policies that are part of some programs. For example, we have a joint program. Your clients receive that kind of insurance. If we do not include that kind of packaged policies, then there are some 50 policies in the whole of Russia. And this market does not amount to 500,000. Do you think cyber insurance should be mandatory? And do you believe that the incident liability should be increased for, say, negligence? The insurers do not like the mandatory. What they are fond of is the not imposed, but it is the necessary. Like, for example, you have to buy some insurance because you are a member of some organization. That's what we see at the market. Some 30 policies that we have, the bulk is purchased by the companies when pressured by their clients. They said, the customers say, we are not going to deal with you until you have the coverage. And that's not unique for Russia. A number of the policies abroad are purchased for the very reason that the companies purchase the policies when pressured by their customers. The insurers like it. You might make use of this policy, but you're not sure whether some incident might take place or not. From the point of view of liability, I think it will be the right thing to increase it, because the people who trust technologies too much, they are not protected. If their personal identity is stolen, they are not going to claim it because they realize that they won't get anything. And when they know that if anything is stolen, the damage, the losses will be reimbursed, then they will start buying it. It should be some kind of reimbursement. but the reimbursement of the loss, not the penalty, not the fine. So the very last question, the AIG, do you insure yourself from the risks? We do, but I won't tell you the figures. Okay, let me have a short comment regarding who and what pushes the organizations to insure things. If the organization believe in the expertise of the insurance company, and because the insurance company has made the audit of the company, because they are not, we will not be taking the risks. And if the companies are forced to insurance, it's very successful. Sometimes the organizations are forced to do the insurance, but the tariffs, the rates are not regulated. This kind of insurance is no good. The insurance company has to demonstrate that they have the required expertise to make an audit of the organization prior to do the insurance, but the market is not ripe yet, not mature yet. So when you have the PCI certification, it's necessary to have an accreditation, and so will then the insurance be necessary? We cannot afford it now because the requirements for the companies that will be doing the audit, it's only one requirement. It is the availability of the specific license, and it's quite a challenge for us. We understand we will have to develop the quality assessment system, and we have started this particular work, but I can see that it might provoke very challenging discussions with the regulators, with the Federal Security Service, and because we will be infringing on their purview of responsibility. And when we will be able to resolve all the contradictions, I don't know, but it will be only logical to ensure the liability. And I agree, we need to ensure the both liability and to switch over from not to penalties, but to compensate the loss. And this will enable to make those who have lost their money to come into the open and to report the attacks made against them. And because right now, if they voluntarily send their money to the criminals, then they accuse bank now. That kind of practice will be abandoned. IBS is a large company. You are running a lot of infrastructural projects, and surely you have an information security system. So the question for you is what issues are raised by the customer, and when you understand what issues should be addressed by the customer. Thank you, Ilya. It's indeed a very interesting question, and it will allow me to say what trends exist now, and the trends that our customers experience. Depending on the scales of the companies and their professionals, the issues of information security as a threat have been identified by our customers, and our customers do not just fill in the gaps. They have a proactive approach, developing the systems to monitor the IT landscape of their organization. And from the point of view of the concept, the information security has become part of the IT landscape, and it is now part of the digital hygiene. It's not only about content, because when we build a house, we do not discuss whether we should build the foundation. It goes without saying. That's why when there are major IT projects, the IT security seamlessly becomes the part of the whole business. Another aspect that I would like to draw your attention to, and it is something to do with the figures that Ilya, that you gave us in the beginning. There is an IBM report of 2018, and the figures in the report are very interesting. We know that the best way to get hooked up hooked up to the computer of the boss is to have a good relationship with the secretary of the boss. No, I think it's better to hack the computer. The IBM thinks differently. They believe that more than 60% of the IT security incident has been caused by the staff of the organization, and at that they are not linked, they are not connected to the criminals. They are the cause, they are the reason of the incident. More than 60% of the incidents. Any specific examples?
I'm not currently talking about specific examples, I'm talking about the approach. But you don't have to read the American reports for this, because our Russian experience proves that. As a matter of fact, we're now talking that to increase the level of a business security, of a cybersecurity considerably, you should take a look at if you really need this person in a certain business process. You had the reorganization of the business processes to increase efficiency, but currently it's also a part of the cyber digital hygiene, and it's time to review the processes in terms of cybersecurity. Yes, but my question is a little bit more detailed. Do I understand it correctly that you use the IBM data to evaluate risks? My question was, how do you understand what the risks are the more probable? And cybersecurity is fairly general. You have not so much time, unfortunately. My question is, if we should replace replace a component in the business process by a computer, who do we replace by a computer, the boss or the secretary? We should stay rational in this process and take away the human factor out of transactional processes. I'm not talking about cutting personnel. I'm talking thinking about reconceptualizing processes, which has become a part of cybersecurity. The issues of cybersecurity are right now much broader than using specialized tools. I apologize. Everyone understands it in the audience. I would like you to speak on how the probability of a specific risk is assessed. A simple example so that we understand each other. The probability of dying in Moscow. The poisoning, food poisoning, car accidents, and traumas. So you should choose your drivers wisely. Do not walk near the construction site, and eat good food. And do not worry with people who are professional fighters. The cyber risks all have their probability as well. How do you assess the risks? Could you please go in detail on this? You don't have so much time. My question is caused by the fact that very expensive infrastructure, IBM tools, do not save from cybersecurity incidents because they do not protect themselves from the risks which may happen, which may really happen. I would not like to speak on a specific project solution, but the first story, I'm very positive about risk-oriented approach, where we assess the potential damage from a cybersecurity incident, with the potential costs to implement the protection solution. The second thing is, it does not matter how you prevent cybersecurity incidents. You could have intruders from the inside and from the outside. And you also need some security, some guys who will be monitoring the situation, and on the decision-making level, on the data collection level, collecting data about the criminals working here, guys who will be making decisions based on this. There should be operational centers, security operations center on cybersecurity. This is a modern trend which is very much popular. The IBS provides services like this. I know other companies as well. And this is a new concept which enables us to take a look at the cybersecurity. Unfortunately, I could not receive an answer to my question. I believe we'll continue the discussion at the Petersburg Forum. Raiffeisen Bank. Mr. Popov, this is a large international bank. What do you think about cyber risks? How do you define it? How often you update your map of the cyber risks? Thank you very much. We've seen this trend in the discussion as well, about the definition, about the scope, about the description. I believe this correlates this question as well, because the cyber risk, we do not specify cyber risks as such. For us, it's part of operational risks. Just like an insurance, the risk is covered with something else. This is a part of other actions or inactions, non-actions. There are internal and external factors to a cyber risk. Normally, this has to do with informational technologies and systems. And possible data leaks are also part of this concept. And a subcategory, an attack on some sort of infrastructure like the ATMs. A loss or inability to fulfill a certain transaction caused by a loss of critical infrastructure is also an operational risk, which potentially can be caused by a cyber threat. This is how we see it. Everything that has to do with business continuity, it's also part of this definition. As for the methodology and of the management of this, our banking group uses an advanced approach which has to do with Basel concept to assess risk. For this, we take a look at the factors appearing in our business landscape. We have some risk scenarios established. As a cause of business operation, we analyze incidents, and based on this, we have some indicators to warn us on a potential threat. We also have some action plans. We do realize that we cannot mitigate the risks fully. It's not a question if you are hacked. The question is when you are hacked. So this is actually all about reacting to risks, minimizing losses or minimizing threats. This is where we focus our main attention. Do you have does the risk map differ, Russian risk map differs from the global risk map? We have a number of scenarios group-wide. It is, of course, adapted or customized according to the specifics of the country, of the maturity of the organization, of the maturity of the security systems. And based on that, so we have a complete picture, which will, of course, differ across nations. Other cyber drills that you have between countries. Now we actually exchange information between countries, but we don't do drills with NATO countries, for instance. Internally, we do have some games which have to do with business continuity, so sort of a drill. Apart from that, we focus a lot on the recovery speed. We evaluate the scenarios, we assess them, we see where our weak link is. Are you insured? No, we don't. Do you know how many companies in Russia buy insurance policies and cyber risks? Zero. No one buys such a policy, but the insurance companies do offer those policies in Russia. A second question, quite provocative. Is there a bank which serves as a role model for you in terms of cybersecurity, and what color is its brand? I believe that we should not have role models. We should work internally. But other banks which are a model for you, or other banks should have a look at your model. I believe banks should exchange information, should share information. I think FinCert is a good community for us, helping us to be better as an industry. There are some factors, like we did not, we have not any issues with WannaCry or Petya, but we as banks did not have any problems with that. Vulnerabilities, tracking the situation in Raiffeisen Bank was quite weak compared to my previous employer. The last question. Do you take the FinCert report into account when updating your risk map? Do you update them? Yes, we do, of course. How much time is needed to update the risk map? Like the report appeared yesterday. We do the review every 6 months. So we take a look at the report and we'll integrate this into the risk map. What is your advice to all the banks in terms of cybersecurity? In a sentence. Besides that, they should be visiting our panel. I wanted to do this and stay as long as you can in the Phenopolis. I believe I would recommend sharing data and working closely with the colleagues in the industry. Mr. Sichov, we have the Ural Forum beside the Phinopolis. Yes, I wanted to tell this as well. Mr. Lyapunov, a question to you. You're heading the largest security operations center in Eastern Europe, and set the regulatory and paperwork apart. What is the main thing and what are the main trends that you should pay attention to reduce the number of incidents? Please share your experience. Thank you. There are 3 key components to that. First one, everyone. Investments into active security system make no sense. So buying new technologies, tools to actively prevent attacks make no sense. You all know about the attacks of the last year. All of the large corporations which are victims of those attacks, they had enormous cybersecurity prevention budgets. They had lots of firewalls, antiviruses, but those large attacks were a very unpleasant surprise for them. It's not a problem of not having something. The key thing is manageability of those tools. Having an antivirus, having bought an antivirus but not updating it makes no sense. The key vector to increase the level of security is to tidy it up, is to update your operational systems, both client and server ones. This is managing your antiviruses. This is excluding the wares from your networks. These are obvious things, and the key point which can increase your efficiency in cybersecurity is monitoring and increasing the manageability.
And the second thing, right now, the whole security management system is being re-engineered, reinvented. What was the security infrastructure before? First, the threat models, the offenders types were analyzed, and then the infrastructure was built. Right now, the system is engineered differently. First thing, it's necessary to monitor the dynamics of the in-house environment of the IT landscape, and the IT system is catching up with the business initiatives, and the internal dynamics should be tracked by the IT specialists, and then it is monitoring the dynamics of the external environment when every day the new types of the modes of attack are developed. And right now, the major feature is ability to detect the attack and to respond to it real fast. And right now, IT security system building should be construing the system to respond to the variations, both internal and external. And number 3, which is another factor which is very important now, previously, for the past 15 years, we built the security system as something separate from the IT systems. The IT systems, the IT specialists believe that IT security is the purview of responsibility of the IT specialists that draw money to defend the IT systems. It is not true now. Right now, the building of the digital company goes hand in glove with the building the IT system. It is the so-called security by design. It is having the inbuilt security when building the business process, And these three things, concentrating not on multiplying the applications, but to manage the security and re-engineering the IT security as responding to risk and security by design, will have a new level of defense for our financial organizations. I think if when we are talking about multiplying the system, you're talking about the mature companies. And right now, there are companies that do not have the initial things. If the virus just get there to the mail server, and if they are not launched in the sandbag that does not have the external telemetry, if it is not controlled and monitored 24/7, it's bad case. I think there's a gentleman's set that the small and media companies should have. Of course, there should be baseline security and the something basic that should be intrinsic to any company. But if you face a choice of either to tune the system or to buy the sand box, you should do the tuning inside the organizations. Of course, it's clear that it is cool to buy things and to buy some new things, but it is necessary to do the housekeeping first. It is free of charge. You don't have to interact with the other stakeholders, with the third parties. Of course, it's complicated to do, but you should have due diligence first, and then you will be purchasing something from the outside vendors. So it's not possible to have security without proper apps. So what major attacks happened in the past year? And the second question, since you have an access to some client data, are you doing the insurance? Are you paying for the insurance? No, we do not, because right now we have an interesting project with the Alpha Strachovanie insurance company, and to use insurance as a tool, we should have the client mature, and the market should be mature. To answer the question, what are the new types of attacks that have happened, though trite as it might seem, I will not talk about the politically motivated attacks, but talking about our clients that we monitor, so we can see that the attackers are getting more lazier. We can see few examples when the attackers just go headlong. It might be some kind of phishing letters, something that has been uploaded from that net, and it is that kind of laziness might be dictated by the clients, the customers being relaxed as well, and not being cautious. If we are more cautious, that kind of things will go. Most of the attackers find a victim that is less protected, less defended, and they use simple, straightforward tools to hack. And I will confirm what was mentioned, the offenders getting more relaxed, and they act even without thinking ahead. We came across the thing that when the offenders were providing the invoice, they were not even thinking twice about checking the spelling mistakes, just to try their luck. But thinking about the future, and I've been dealing with that kind of malware practice, and I would like to be wrong, but I think my prediction will come true. everything is developing spirally, and some 3-4 years later, we will have a different type of offender. They will realize that they will have to invest heavily into the development of the malware to draw big money in the future. I wish I were wrong, but I think that would happen. Let me add what we have observed in the past year. Some of the attacks started 2.5 years ago, but they were finalized this year. They've been with the system for long. We should check the logs and correlate them with the external data. And it turned out that the companies were not ready for the attacks, not in terms of the insurance, but because the logs are not archived, there's no redundancy, and many got used to classical audits, but if the incident happened, it's necessary to drill what the company should do if the company has been attacked, or where the logs are, where the archives are, whether those logs are enough to do the investigations. And if there is an attack, it might take a few weeks to rebuild, to have the system running again. Not much time left. A few questions for our experts. So we have a microphone in the conference room. I'm ready to take some questions from the floor. It's a question for Artem. And there is a standard. I am Vladimir Kruglyanchik from Art Technologies. There is a GOST standard on info security, and there's a code of the Central Bank of Russia that qualify different types of financial activities to meet the requirements of this standard. And there's a road map, and by the 1st of January 2020, all the financial services should be certified for conformity. We are talking about the thousands of applications that keep changing either every day or once over a fortnight, and it's a huge volume of the source codes that somebody should study. And the certification, there's much uncertainty about the certification organizations, whether they will cope, whether they will manage, how we should act in the future, because there's no new versions that are being released. What's the question then? Well, how does the central banks see the solution of this challenge operationally? Well, talking about how we should do in the future, I think we should do that regularly and with the pleasure, and the more so that we will all get to the heaven. Talking about that particular standard, and we have applied the traditional procedure. We have made it a public domain, and we discuss it not only with the stakeholders, but in the central bank as well, because this particular issue should be resolved internally in the central bank regarding the certification of the software, of the applications. And there will be no need to certify all the applications. The most important thing is to get away with the vulnerabilities in the client, in the customer-oriented software. That is the most challenging issue, and the vulnerabilities in the client-oriented applications most probably will give the offender to intervene, to intrude at the client side. What shall we do then? We have developed the defense profile for such client-side applications. It is clear what we shall do with the banks. As far as other financial organizations are concerned, we might we might tune it somehow. Anyway, we have a risk profile, and we will make it public pretty soon, and we will be able to discuss it with the stakeholders. And another thing. So we have adopted the practices of what is available in the rest of the world, and we realize that we tread carefully, and if we see what the international regulators' practices are, established practices, we can see that the internationally they do not only certify the applications that they have a multi-stage assessment, and it's not possible to release an application without the assessment is peer assessment is done. And our approach is softer. We can still take a couple of questions from the floor. One microphone over there, and then to the girl in white. I'm Sergei Plushin from the Higher Economics School. A question for Ilya, something that has not been discussed. It is the issue related to the hardware, the vulnerability of the hardware during the latest attack of 2018. What do you think about the vulnerability of the hardware? You know what the most prominent threat for the hardware is? It is the imposition of the sanctions. When we looked into the matter, the current sanctions that were imposed by the U.S. in August are defined in an interesting manner. It is possible to ban import dual technologies. It is 700 pages in details about all the industries, and we fall into the brackets. It is by the capacity and the telecom equipment, and what is covered by the sanctions.
Everything which connected with Microsoft, with VMware, Hewlett-Packard, Cisco, and, well, it is enough, right? And the problem of implants for us, it stays on the agenda, but it's not what we need to be frightened of. We will need to develop our microelectronics industry. If you take a look at the regulation 382P, the first step has been made there. We move towards the production of ESM modules in Russia. This is a very complicated task, but it is a real risk that we see. Technical features are described in our report, but the problem is that the experts, there are few experts who realize the vulnerabilities and the microcontrollers. I believe those are 100 people who are able to talk at it, and training those people, educating those people is also a huge issue. The representatives of Solar and IBS and Rostelecom should not be frightened of insuring. We are insurant, and we have a cooperation with Alfa Strachowanie. We launched a product on that, so I recommend Alma Abayeva, National Payment Council, the compromising of biometric data. Ilya, how will you protect me? I'm really afraid of identifying myself biometrically, because I'm afraid that the data will be leaked. The problem is not that if the data will be compromised, but when and it will be compromised. The faster you talk, the less understandable it is. Mr. Bierov. All right, data compromise. I don't want to have 10 Albanian buyers to take loans using my biometrical data. I do not want it either. So about what will happen when it happens? We will go to heaven. I'm assure you that it will not be the case. Unfortunately, we've run out of the time, dear experts. Thank you very much for taking part in this panel. It's the most important panel of Phenopolis. Thank you very much for, and sorry for my jokes, but I think that it makes the information more accessible. See you at the Ural Forum.